I plan to grab his bad right arm and shake it like crazy. By the way, I'm glad he didn't get to be president. I prefer a guy who can push the nuclear button with either hand. The feminists have this thing, take our daughters to work day. Why don't the men have take our sons to the cat house night? At the beginning of the Iraq War, I saw a red, white, and blue bumper sticker that said, United We Stand. What is that supposed to mean? During the Revolutionary War, it referred to the American colonies. What does it mean now? That we should all think alike and there should be no dissenting opinions? As far as I'm concerned, united we're fucked. O.J. Simpson has already received the ultimate punishment. For the rest of his life, he has to associate with golfers. I don't believe in road rage. I prefer the gentle rebuke. If I don't like the way someone is driving, I pull up alongside the other car and say, I hope your children turn out poorly. Only one time have I lost my cool. That was the time I said to a woman, I hope you get a blister on your cunt. But I said it with a smile. True fact. A headline said, Peacekeeper killed in safe haven. Good. That'll show 'em. I think a lot of gay men stay in the closet because they're interested in fashion. I wonder if a person who comes out of a coma feels refreshed and well-rested. One day it dawned on me that Hitler had a mom and dad. The phrase, Hitler's mom and dad, has an odd ring to it, doesn't it? It's kind of like when CNN used to talk about the city of Tikrit in Iraq being Saddam Hussein's hometown. The two ideas don't seem to go together. You know what's great about being in your 60s? Your children are in their 40s, so you don't have to worry about child molesters anymore. Unless, of course, one of your 40-year-old children is a child molester. I drove past a school with a sign that said, We're drug-free and gun-free. Later that day, I drove past another school that didn't have a sign like that. What am I supposed to infer from this about the second school? Reasons for giving up hope. Nothing works, nothing counts, nothing fits, no one cares, no one listens, standards have fallen, everyone's fatter, lines are longer, traffic's worse, kids are dumber, and the air is dirty. I'll be back with more reasons for giving up hope. In the meantime, try to come up with a few of your own. Here's a thought. If you have a perfectly DNA-matched identical twin, technically it's possible to go fuck yourself. Sometimes you hear people say, what kind of a message does that send to our children? And I think, what messages are these people talking about? When I was a kid, I never got any messages. Maybe an aunt would send me a birthday card or something, or once in a while my mother would get a Western Union telegram. But at our house, that was about it. Good news for senior citizens. Death is near. During one of those patriotic orgies of self-congratulation that followed the First Gulf War, as General Schwarzkopf was bragging about dropping fire on women and babies, a protester interrupted his speech. The man who had killed a few 100,000 civilians continued to speak. The protester was charged with disturbing the peace. In New York State, there's a town called Eastchester. It's in a county called Westchester. I think we need some new Christmas carols with a more modern approach. Of course, I wouldn't abandon the religious theme completely. How about, Holy Christ, the Christmas tree's on fire? Or, Jesus, can you believe it's Christmas again? This ought to get the ball rolling. I'm hoping you people will take it from here. True fact. In 2002, in the U.S. Supreme Court, the surviving heirs of the famous film comedy trio were awarded the intellectual rights to the Three Stooges. I don't know about you, but years ago, when Evel Knievel was jumping across the Snake River on his motorcycle, I was rooting for the river. In the news from Israel, I keep hearing about the cycle of violence. It reminded me that when I was a kid, I had one of them too. After school, I used to peddle it around the neighborhood, hitting other kids over the head with a big steel pipe. They always say the vice president is just a heartbeat away from the presidency. Don't they mean the lack of a heartbeat? I always feel good when I visit a sick room supply store and see all the things I don't need. The last thing a young girl needs is a hands-on father. I really feel good. I wish I felt even more like this. Dear Mom, how are you? I am fine. I tried to donate my liver to science, but they wouldn't take it. Next time I'm going to add some sautéed onions and a light sauce. I'll let you know how it goes. Love, Neil. An anonymous quote. There's nothing wrong with a man who enjoys a good blowjob. I read an article that cautioned people against shaken baby syndrome. Do people really need to be told this sort of thing? And if some people do need to be told, are these the kind of people who are very likely to heed the advice? Personally, I never shake a baby, unless the recipe calls for it. Imagine how creepy it would be to be sexually abused by your great-great-grandparents. Ugh. Do you know why it is that when a rancher fucks a sheep, he does it at the edge of a cliff? It's so the sheep will push back. True fact. A guy somewhere in the Midwest was sued for having too many Christmas lights on his house. Happy holidays. I think Western Union should have a service where women with big tits come to your house and sing happy birthday. They could call it a mammogram. Whenever I hear about someone who died for the flag, I always wonder about his real motives. And then I remember, oh yeah, they shoot deserters. A lot of the people who worry about the safety of nuclear plants don't bother using their seat belts. Here's some fun. Just keep calling telephone numbers at random and yelling, "Get off the line!" This is National Disabled Month. Do your part. Cripple someone today. 2 soldiers get into a fight. 2 other soldiers pull them apart and tell them not to fight. Then they all pick up their guns and go kill people. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The chicken. What about the egg? Oh, okay, the egg. Using technology to clean up the mess made by technology doesn't seem too intelligent. At one time, if you made a telephone call from your table in a restaurant, it would have been a novelty and it would have attracted a lot of attention, more than the food. Now, if you're using a telephone at your table in a restaurant, it's considered a nuisance. Why don't they just let these gay Boy Scouts join the Girl Scouts? What the fuck? You've got 2 groups. Use them both. There's a whole different now. When you drive into California from Las Vegas, they have an agricultural inspection station where they ask you if you have any fruits or vegetables with you. And then they just believe whatever you tell them. What's the point of that? You know what I do? On every trip, I put a yam in the glove compartment just to be sure I'm breaking the law. We ought to have a name for the day before yesterday. Day for day? Yesterfor day. Why don't you people just come up with something and get back to me? I don't own any stocks or bonds. All my money is tied up in debt. A good motto to live by. Always try not to get killed. If Marilyn Monroe were alive today, she'd be in her late 70s, and I'll bet there would still be guys lining up for a chance to fuck her. Why not join the army? Join up and die. How do you expect to keep America free if you won't die? I'm dead. I died in Vietnam. I'm dead, and all my old army buddies are dead. Can you say that? No. What's wrong with you? Perhaps you've noticed we no longer have old people in this country. They're all gone now, replaced by senior citizens. Somehow we wound up with millions of these unfortunate creatures known as golden agers or mature adults. These are cold, lifeless, antiseptic terms, typically American, all ways of sidestepping the fear of aging. And it's not difficult to understand the fear of aging. It's natural and it's universal. No one wants to get old. No one wants to die. But we do. We die. And we don't like that. So we shade the truth. I started doing it when I reached my 40s. I'd look in the mirror at that time and think, well, I guess I'm getting older. That sounded a little better than old. Sounded like it might even last a bit longer. But people forget that older is comparative, and they use it as an absolute. She's an older woman. Oh, really? Older than what? Than she used to be? Well, yeah. So? People think getting old is bad because they think being old is bad. But you know something? Being old is just fine. In fact, it can be terrific. And anyway, it's one of those things you don't get to choose. It's not optional. But that insufferable group among us known as baby boomers, ages 42 through 59 as of 2005, are beginning to get old, and they're having trouble dealing with that. Remember, these baby boomers are the ones who gave us this soft, politically correct language in the first place. So rather than admit they're getting old, the baby boomers have come up with a new term to describe themselves as they approach the grave. They don't care for middle-aged, so instead, get this, folks, instead they claim to be pre-elderly. Don't you love that? Pre-elderly. It's a real word. You don't hear it a lot, but it's out there. The boomers claim that if you're between 50 and 65, you're pre-elderly. But I'd be willing to bet that in 2011, when they begin turning 65, they will not be calling themselves elderly. I have a hunch they'll come up with some new way of avoiding reality. And I have a suggestion for them. They should call themselves the pre-dead. It's a perfect term because for them, it's accurate and it's highly descriptive. By the way, those ever-clever boomers have also come up with a word to describe the jobs they feel are most suitable for retired people who wish to keep working. They call these jobs elder-friendly. Isn't that sad? God, that's just really, really sad. And so, to sum it up, we have these senior citizens. And whether I like that phrase or not, unfortunately, I got used to it, and I no longer react too violently when I hear it. But there is still one description for old people that I'll never accept. That's when I hear someone describe an old guy as being, for instance, 80 years young. Even though I know it's tongue-in-cheek, it makes my skin crawl. It's overly cute and precious, and it's an evasion. It's junk language. On CBS's 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl, God help her, actually referred to some old man as being a 90-something. Please, Leslie, I need a small personal break here. One last pathetic example in this category. On the radio, I heard Matt Drudge actually refer to people of age. And he wasn't being sarcastic. He said the West Nile virus is a particular threat to people of age. Poor Matt. Apparently he's more fucked up than he seems. Now, going to an adjacent subject, one unfortunate fact of life for many of these 80 or 90-somethings is that they're forced to live in places where they'd rather not be. Old people's homes. So what name should we use for these places where we hide our old people? When I was a little boy, there was a building in my neighborhood called the Home for the Aged. It had a copper sign on the gate. Home for the Aged. It always looked deserted. I never saw anyone go in. Naturally, I never saw anyone come out either. Later, I noticed people started calling those places nursing homes and rest homes. Apparently, it was decided that some of these old people needed nurses, while others just needed a little rest. What you hear them called now is retirement homes or long-term care facilities. There's another one of those truly bloodless terms, long-term care facility. But actually, it makes sense to give it a name like that, because if you do, you make it a lot easier for the person you're putting in there to acquiesce and cooperate with you. I remember old people used to tell their families, whatever you do, don't put me in a home. Please, don't put me in a home. But it's hard to imagine one of them saying, whatever you do, don't put me in a long-term care facility. So calling it that is really a trick. Come on, Grandpa, it's not a home. It's a long-term care facility. By the way, while we're on this subject of the language of getting old, I want to tell you something that happened to me in New York on a recent evening. I was standing in line at the Carnegie Deli to pay my check, and there was a guy ahead of me who looked like he was in his 60s. He gave the cashier a $10 bill, but apparently it wasn't enough. When the cashier mentioned it to him in a nice way, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I had a senior moment." And I thought how sad that was, to blame a simple mistake on the fact that you're in your 60s, even if you're just sort of joking. As if anyone would think a 20-year-old couldn't make the same mistake. I only mention this because it's an example of how people can brainwash themselves by adopting popular language. I wanted to pull him aside and say, listen, I just heard you refer to yourself as a senior, and I wanted to ask, were you by any chance a junior last year? Because if you weren't a junior last year, then you're not a senior this year. I wanted to say it, but I figured, why would he listen to me? After all, I'm still a freshman. Here's a safety tip from the American Eye Association. Never jab a knitting needle directly into your eye and repeatedly thrust it in and out. You could be inviting vision problems. If you should suffer an eye injury, rinse the eye immediately with a caustic solution of Clorox and ammonia, and rub the surface of the eye vigorously for about 10 minutes with number 3 sandpaper. The American Eye Association reminds you, don't fuck around with your eyes. They're the key to vision. Do you ever get lip crud? That sticky film that sometimes forms on your lip, especially the lower lip? It's kind of a gooey crud that builds up, and when it dries, it turns into a gummy, crusty coating. Thicker at the corners of the mouth, but thinning out as it works its way down toward the center of the lip. And when it's really bad, the corners of your mouth look like parentheses. Do you ever get that? Lip crud? Well, here's how you get rid of it. It's a simple, low-tech operation, and it requires just a single tool, the thumbnail. That's all you need. You scrape the crud off with your thumbnail. You just scrape it on down, and you keep on scraping. Don't worry about those people watching from the bus stop. If they knew anything, they wouldn't be riding the bus. You scrape it on down, you scrape it on down, and finally, when it's all off, you take it and roll it up into a little ball, and then you save that son of a bitch. That's my practice, folks. I save it. Personally, I'm a lip crud buff. In fact, I save everything I remove from my body. Don't you? At least for a little while. Don't you look at things when they first come off of you? Study them? Aren't you curious? Don't you spend a few minutes looking at something, trying to figure out what it is and what it's doing on you in the first place? Sure you do. You don't just pull some growth off your neck and throw it in the trash. You study it. You want to know what it is. Besides, you never know when you're going to need parts. Isn't that true? You ever see these guys on TV? They're in the hospital. One guy's waiting for a kidney, another guy's waiting for a lung. Fuck that shit. I've got parts at home. I have a freezer full of viable organs, 2 of everything, ready to go. What do you need, a spleen? An esophagus? How about a nice used ball bag, huh? Come on. Caucasian ball bag, 1 owner, good condition. He only scratched it on Sundays. Come on, folks, take a chance. I've got everything you need. But regardless of your need for parts, the larger point is true. Most people study the things they pick off their bodies before they throw them away. Because you want to know what something is. You don't want to spend 15 minutes peeling a malignant tumor off your forehead just to toss it out the window sight unseen into the neighbor's swimming pool. No, you want to take a good long look at it. You may even want to share the experience. Holy shit, honey, look at this thing. Holy jumping fucking Jesus. Look at this. Hey, honey, come in here. Honey, come in. Come in here, goddammit. Fuck the rice-a-roni. Get your ass in here. Look at this thing. Ain't it something? Guess where I got it? A minute ago it was part of my head. Not anymore. I pried the bastard off with paint thinner and a Phillips head screwdriver. But look at it, honey. Look at the colors. It's green, blue, yellow, orange, brown, tan, khaki, beige, bronze, olive, neutral, black, off-black, champagne gold, Navajo white, turquoise, and Band-Aid color. Plus, get this, it's exactly the same shape as Iraq. That is, if you leave out that northern section where the Kurds live. I'm not throwing this bastard away. It might become a collectible. Dial up those dickheads on eBay. We can make some fucking money on this thing. It annoys me when people complain about athletes taking steroids to improve athletic performance. It's a phony argument because over the years, every single piece of sports equipment used by athletes has been improved many times over. Golf balls and clubs, tennis balls, rackets, baseball gloves and bats, football pads and helmets, and so on through every sport. Each time technology has found a way to improve equipment, it has done so. So why shouldn't a person treat his body the same way? In the context of sports, the body is nothing more than one more piece of equipment anyway, so why not improve it with new technology? Athletes use weights. Why shouldn't they use chemicals? Consider the Greek Phidippides, a professional runner who in 490 BC ran from Athens to Sparta and back, 280 miles, to ask the Spartans for help against the Persians in an impending battle that threatened Athens. Don't you think his generals would have been happy to give him amphetamines if they had been available, and a nice pair of New Balance high-performance running shoes while they were at it? Grow up, purists. The body is not a sacred vessel. It's a tool. I don't care for athletes who point to the sky after they've accomplished something on the field. Even worse are the ones who kneel down, bow their heads, and make a big show of being believers. You know something? God doesn't like that shit. He's not impressed with spiritual grandstanding. It embarrasses him. He says, "Get up, you phony show-off bullshit artist, and pay attention to the fucking game. I took the points." Imagine the conceit of these people who think God is helping them and is looking for their acknowledgement. I say, play now, pray later. Attitude check. Let's straighten out this whole attitude thing. Someone on TV said the sports anchor guys on ESPN have a lot of attitude. Let me tell you something. What these guys have is not attitude. Here's attitude. One day when I was about 18, I was standing at the bar in the Moreland Tavern with a couple of guys from my New York neighborhood. The Moreland had big windows, so if you were standing by the bar, you could easily see the people walking by on Broadway. One of the guys in our group was a little older than the rest of us, an ex-convict named John Cooney. All of a sudden, in the middle of the conversation, he looked out the window and saw someone walking past. He reached behind the bar for the baseball bat, the one the bartenders used for settling sports and political arguments, and he went outside, walked up to the guy on the sidewalk, and just started smashing him with the baseball bat. The guy fell down. John walked back into the bar and put the bat away. He said, "The guy owes me money." That's attitude. The guys on ESPN don't have that. What they have is a kind of smart-mouth white boy college mentality. They're snotty, superficial white guys. Even the black anchors on ESPN are nothing more than snotty white guys. Snotty is not attitude. Snotty is just bad manners, and it's boring. John Cooney knew attitude. He also knew more about how to swing a bat than any of those blow-dried, never-were athletes sitting safely behind their fruity little desks. 25 years ago, two lovely girls in San Carlos, California, were kind enough to perform this following football cheer for me. and in 1984 I used it on an HBO show. I'm passing it along now and would like to point out that it's actually quite useful at sporting events of any kind. In fact, I've found it to be a big crowd pleaser at weddings, baptisms, and first communions as well. Here it is. Chant this in good health. Rat shit, bat shit, dirty old twat. 69 assholes tied in a knot. Hooray! Lizard shit, fuck! Let's go over that again, this time with a few comments. Rat shit, bat shit. How nice to begin with a reference to nature. Dirty old twat. A perfectly normal sports reference as far as I'm concerned. 69 assholes tied in a knot. No, I don't know what that means either. Hooray! There's the cheer part. Lizard shit. Back to nature once again. Fuck! And we end on an uplifting note. Now, here's the happy postscript. About 10 years later, I met a guy named Michael who gave me the second verse to the cheer. I hope those San Carlos girls will hear this and accept it as my way of saying thanks. Eat, bite, fuck, suck, nibble, gobble, chew. Finger fuck, hair pie, dick, cunt, screw. Hooray! Bat fuck, blow me. Let's go over that again. Eat, bite, fuck, suck. Once again, off to an excellent start. Nibble, gobble, chew. I notice verbs are more prominent this time. Finger fuck, hair pie, dick, cunt, screw. More good sports references. Hooray! Can't have a cheer without it. Bat fuck. Truly an interesting thought. Blow me. Once again, ending on an uplifting note. Cheers. Never buy two different garments of the same type at the same time, such as two sports shirts. Inevitably, you will like one better than the other, and you will choose to wear it every time. The second one will always remain second choice, and it will stay in the closet, coming out only occasionally when you hold it in front of you at arm's length and decide not to wear it. Here's how you handle this problem. Exercise a little discipline at the store and buy just one shirt. Then, if you like it, wait a month and buy another. That's it. Next, I'm going to work on nuclear proliferation. Another area of speech that could benefit from a bit more realism would be those announcements that are made just before a boxing match. Ladies and gentlemen, the main event of the evening, 12 rounds of heavyweight boxing. In this corner from Cornhole, Mississippi, weighing 200 pounds and wearing soiled white trunks, an utter and complete loser who is wanted in 6 states for crimes against the animal kingdom. Considered a complete scumbag by his family, he once fucked his sister at a church picnic and forced her to walk home alone. Also, on at least 4 occasions, he has taken out his dick at the circus and waved it at the trapeze lady. Here is Henry Gonzalez. In the other corner, wearing a pair of lame, out-of-style zebra-skin shorts that he found on the street, from Sweatband, Arkansas, an unattractive and disturbed young man who by court order is not permitted to be alone for more than 2 minutes at a time. In and out of 16 mental institutions over the years, he is a dangerous sociopath who once killed a nun for blocking his view. He has been legally barred from more than 1,500 bars in the New York City area alone, and recently, while visiting a supermarket, he forced a fat woman to blow him in the meat section. Here is Matty Murphy. The fighters move out to the center of the ring to have the boxing rules recited to them. All right, boys, you know the rules. No biting, scratching, clawing, or tripping. No yanking dicks. No grabbing the other guy's testicles and snapping them up and down. No using a small screwdriver to punch holes in the other guy's neck during clinches. And if you're going to call the other guy's mother a diseased $2 whore, please, in the interest of accuracy, use her full name. When taking leave of one another, we often say, be well. Perhaps we should be more precise and a bit more practical. Reasonably, we can't expect everyone to be healthy all the time. Good wishes should be more realistic. I hope you remain reasonably healthy during the next 18 months or so, and if you have a stroke, I hope it only paralyzes you on one side, leaving you free to take phone calls. I think people would appreciate such thoughtfulness and precision. We Americans love our prepositional phrases. Out of sight, off the charts, in the groove, on the ball, up the creek, down the tubes, in the dumper, out the yin-yang, off the wall, round the bend, below the belt, under the weather, and of course, under the table. But rather than under the table, let us begin on the table. That's a phrase you hear a lot in the news, especially from Washington. In negotiations of any kind, certain things are said to be on the table, implying, of course, that other things are off the table. And sometimes, regardless of what's on the table, a settlement is reached under the table. The table seems important. If a person is highly qualified, we say he brings a lot to the table. Unfortunately, those who bring a lot to the table often have too much on their plates. Still, they're guaranteed a seat at the table because they think outside the box, which puts them ahead of the curve. Now, if the negotiators agree on what's on the table, then they're on the same page. Personally, I don't like people on my page. If someone says to me, we're on the same page, I say, do me a favor, please, turn the page. I'd rather not be on that page. In fact, I'd rather be in a completely different book. But that's beside the point. I've wandered off the track. Returning to negotiations, if the sides are getting close, we're told they're in the ballpark. This often comes from people in the know, speaking off the record. And in Washington, many in the know are also in the loop, because after all, they work inside the Beltway. Now, there are other government people outside the Beltway who nonetheless remain in the know and in the loop. They function in foreign countries, and we say they're on the ground. If they're CIA, they're under the radar and paid off the books. Much of what they learn is picked up on the street. But they don't always need to be on the street, because a lot of information comes in over the transom. Putting aside government for the moment, I wonder if you're aware that a completely different group of people has recently emerged in America. They're not on the ground, and they're not on the street. You know where they are? They're in the house. Apparently, they never went out. And there must be a lot of them, because you hear it all the time. He's in the house. And if I may broach a delicate subject here, some of these people who are in the house are also in the closet. Fortunately for them, if they somehow manage to get out of the closet, they'll still be in the house. That is, they will be until they've left the building. How often these days we hear that someone has left the building? And I'm sure you've noticed it's mostly show business people who leave buildings. The accepted belief being that Elvis was the first to master this maneuver, although you can also find Beatles fans who will argue that the Fab Four were known to have left several buildings as well, thereby accomplishing what would have been the first multi-star building departures. Unfortunately, at the time, no one realized the significance of what the Beatles were doing. Now, there are no doubt those among you who are seething, because has left the building is not a prepositional phrase. I grant that, but you'd have to agree that nonetheless it fits here very nicely. Because after all, only people who are in the house can leave the building. But alas, it's impossible to leave the building if you're still in the closet. In fact, you can't even get to the front door. However, let's say everything breaks your way and somehow you manage to leave the building. Guess where you'll be? Right, back on the street with the CIA. So you better be on your toes, because the CIA will get on your case and they'll be in your face. Who knows, they might even go upside your head. I'm sorry, folks. This is really getting off the wall, so let's return to where this whole thing began, under the table, where those shady deals are made. And isn't it interesting that under the table is similar to under the counter, where illegal products are sold? Under the counter, as opposed, of course, to over the counter, which describes a drug that does not require a prescription. But when you think about it, even drugs that require a prescription are sold over the counter. I mean, the pharmacist doesn't somehow give them to you underneath the counter. You don't get them by going around behind the counter. What happens is you stand at the counter, pay the man, and he hands them to you across the counter. or he sets them down on the counter, and you pick them up off the counter. Or if you want, you can completely eliminate the counter by having the drugs delivered to your home, provided, of course, that at the time you're in the house. Well, folks, it turns out that one of the phrases I used at the beginning of this piece was more appropriate than I suspected at the time. It's clear to me now that in the dumper is exactly where this piece has wound up. So that's it. I'm out the door. Here are some interesting sex facts from Thailand, accurate as of 15 years ago. And I apologize for the dated quality of this information, but I find it fascinating, and since it's accurate, I wish to include it here. In 1990 alone, 5 million sex tourists, mostly affluent men from Japan, spent $4.5 billion on sex in Thailand. The country at that time had 800,000 child prostitutes under the age of 16. Prostitution being the major occupation for children between 10 and 16. The girls earn 20 to 80 cents a week, and their recruitment begins at 6 years of age. Additionally, at that time, there were 200,000 Thai prostitutes working in Europe. In 1993, there were 600,000 Thais infected with AIDS, with 1,200 new cases occurring every day. I have only one question to ask. Doesn't anyone in Asia jerk off anymore? By the way, I can't get newer statistics because apparently everyone in Thailand is too busy getting undressed. Putting the cat out. It was nearly 11:30 and I had just put the cat out. But it hadn't been easy. He had burned more fiercely than I anticipated. The poor thing had caught fire earlier in the evening, when, in an effort to test his reflexes, I had thrown his favorite toy mouse into the fireplace, and instinctively he raced in after it. Whoom, you might say. At first I let him burn a while, just to teach him a lesson, and to peel off a couple of layers of the mud, mange, and matted hair which seemed lately, sadly, to have robbed him of a step or two. But I must admit I was also quite fascinated by the many spectacular colors he began to glow with. Colors, no doubt, owed in part to the countless hours he spent killing time in the toxic dump next door. It was quite a show. In fact, I saw several pyrotechnic effects I dare say have not been witnessed since the Grucci home exploded during the bicentennial. Then, as the feline conflagration began to burn itself out, and I could see the clear, stark outline of his hairless body, he began to emit a dense cloud of smoke, along with some other gaseous substance, which I can only describe as cat steam. Acting quickly, I covered him with several cheap sweaters that no longer fit, and pounded him gently, although not without anger, for just over an hour, or until the smoke died down and he stopped his by then bothersome screeching. At that point, energized, apparently by a sudden burst of pain and fear, he leapt several feet into the air, went stiff and spread-eagled, and began to spin violently, giving off an ominous low-frequency hum, and circling the ceiling fan in an elliptical orbit. He circled for the better part of an hour, and then finally, exhausted, or I thought maybe dead, he went suddenly limp. His orbit decayed, and he smashed into an 18th century brake front, landing heavily on the floor. For 3 days he lay motionless. When finally he awoke, I opened a can of bits of kidney and fed him by hand. I can tell you this, although he looked quite unusual and he smelled god-awful, I was glad I could be there for him when he needed me. Saving the little things we remove from our bodies comes from our natural curiosity. We all have it. We're curious about ourselves, we're curious about our bodies, so we're curious about all the little parts that we clip, snip, pluck, pull, or pick off of ourselves. Toenail clippings are a good example. I'll set the scene for you. You're sitting on the bed at home one night, and something really shitty comes on TV, like a regularly scheduled primetime network program. And you think, well, I'm not going to watch Raymond Blows the Milkman. I'm going to clip my fucking toenails. So you start to clip your toenails, and every time you clip one of them, the little clipped part flies several feet away. You notice that? These little things fly all over the bed. So when you're finished clipping, you have to gather them all back into a little pile. You can't leave them all over the bed. They make little dents in your legs. You don't need that. You have to gather them back into a pile. And do you ever notice this? The bigger the pile gets, the more pride you have in the pile. Look at this, honey, the biggest pile of toenail clippings we've had in this house since the day the big bopper died. Get the fucking camcorder, call the Museum of Natural History, tell them we have a good idea for one of those diorama things. And then you search the bed for the largest clipping of all, the biggest one you can find, usually from the big toe. And you bend it for a while, don't you? Yes, you do. You bend it, you squeeze it, you play with it. You have to. Why? Because you can. Because it's still lively and viable. It just came off of your body. There's still moisture in it. It's almost alive. And sometimes I save my toenail clippings overnight. Do you ever do that? You put them in an ashtray and try to save them till the morning? It's no use. They're no good in the morning. They're too dry. You can't bend them. I say fuck them. Throw them away. Who needs unbendable toenails? Not me. I'm not that sick. I don't need parts that badly. No, sir. Little things, folks. Little things you pick off your body and your curiosity about them, especially if it's something you can't really see before you pick it off. For instance, you know how sometimes you're picking your ass? You know what I mean, just standing out in the driveway, idly picking your ass. And as you're picking and probing, you come across something that seems to be a small object. And let's be real here, folks. After you manage to pull it free, don't you smell it? Just a little bit? Sure you do. You have to. It's only natural. And you get excited. Honey, come here. Look. You want a couple of hits off of this thing while it's still fresh? Remind me something, baby. Did we eat at Fatburger this week? We did. Well, I don't remember ordering anything that smelled like this. I believe this is a shit burger. You know, tastes like a burger, smells like shit. Actually, it smells more like Ethel Merman. Call that Andrew Lloyd Webber fellow. Tell him we have a great idea for one of those fine shows he's always putting on Broadway. Then, give me the scrapbook, baby. This son of a bitch is going right next to that Lithuanian toe jam we found at the Olympics. It's an exciting moment the whole family can enjoy. The birthday party. 2 bachelors at a neighborhood bar. Tomorrow's my 40th birthday. I gotta go get candles and pick up my cake. You buying your own birthday cake? No, I ain't buying my own birthday cake. My mother's buying it. I'm just picking it up. She's giving me a surprise party, but she don't feel good, so she can't pick up the cake. It's a surprise party and you're picking up the cake? I ain't gonna look at it, okay? It's already wrapped. I'm just gonna pick it up. But how can it be a surprise party if you're picking up the cake and you know the party is coming? I don't know when it's coming, do I? Could be 8 in the morning, could be midnight. 8 in the morning? How can you have a birthday party at 8 in the morning? Who the fuck is gonna come? The milkman? Don't laugh. My mother would do it. One year on my birthday, I got drunk and didn't come home. She threw the party without me. What'd she sing? Happy birthday to him? You're a fucking riot, you know that? How many candles you gonna get? Well, we already got 16 from my kid's birthday last year, and 24 is how many come in a box. I'm 40, so I only got to get 1 box. I guess I could go ahead and get 2 boxes and leave my kids' candles alone, but 2 boxes would be 48 candles. And what am I going to do with the 8 extras? Save them? Don't laugh. At my house, we do save them. In fact, we don't even light them up. Why not? Well, if you light them up, they look crappy the next time you want to use them. Believe me, we don't waste nothing in my house. In fact, listen to this. A couple of years ago, my grandfather turned 96. 96 is 4 boxes, right? 4 times 24. Right. Well, we only had 60 candles on hand, because that's all we ever need for my mother. She's one of them people, when she turned 60, she decided to stop having birthdays. So 60's all we need, 2.5 boxes. So we bought 3 boxes, but that's 72, giving us 12 left over, right? I'm taking your word for it. Trust me, okay? So we got 12 extra candles, and we decided to give them to my niece. She was just turning 36, and she already had a brand new box of 24 of her own. She's a widow with no kids, so she don't need too many candles. I think maybe on a cat's birthday or something, she sticks one on a cupcake. So with her, a box lasts a long time. Keep going. Anyway, like I say, it's my grandfather's 96th birthday, and we only had 60 candles. That means we need 36 more, a box and a half. So we borrowed 36 from my brother. He had 2 full boxes because in about 6 months it's his 48th birthday. But that's still a ways off, so we borrowed 36 from him, which leaves him with 12. And that works out nice because his kid is going to be 12 next week, so we're covered all the way around. You got an interesting family. Anyways, we put the 96 candles on my grandfather's cake and we start to light them up, okay? But there's so many of them that by the time we get to the last one, half of them are just little holes in the frosting with smoke coming out. But if you look down into the holes, you could still see the flames. So my grandfather blew out all 96 candles, but he had to do them one at a time because he had to blow down each individual hole. Plus, he's short-winded. You know the good part? I can't imagine. He got 96 different wishes. Did any of them come true? I think 3. You believe in wishes? I mean, you believe they come true? Nah, I believe in wishes, but I don't believe they come true. Not unless it's a real easy wish, like, I wish I was at a birthday party. But you gotta blow out all the candles, or else the wish don't come true. If one candle stays lit, you don't get your wish. Well, suppose you wished one candle would stay lit. What do you mean? I mean, suppose you wished that one candle would stay lit, and then you blew them all out. What would happen? Well, it couldn't happen unless you blew them all out. But if you blew them all out, then one candle wouldn't have stayed lit, so your wish wouldn't have come true. Don't give me that college shit, will you? Jesus, Herbie, you ever notice this guy? As soon as you start talking about something intelligent, he has to throw in that college shit. He says, if you wish for one candle to stay lit, it won't happen unless you blow all the candles out. That's the kind of shit they teach in college now. That's right. Just so happens my major was comparative birthday cakes with a minor in frosting. It wouldn't surprise me. You gonna have hats? It ain't a party without hats. Nah, no hats. How come? They come 50 in the box. What am I going to do with 48 extra hats? In your family, it might work out. I know. That's why I ain't going to do it. See you next week. Okay, so long. Have a happy birthday. I'll do my best. One Christmas when I was little, my Aunt Lil gave me a book about railroads. It was just the kind of gift I hated, a book. I wanted a toy, preferably a little car or a truck, or maybe a few soldiers. I didn't ask much. Just some kind of toy a boy could play with every day and not get tired of. No, a boring fucking book about railroads with pictures of fucking trains. My mother forced me to tell Aunt Lil that I really liked the book. She made me lie and say thank you and all that other drivel shit parents are constantly trying to push into your head. She didn't want to hurt Lil's feelings. Actually, she didn't want to look bad in Lil's eyes. Well, I made the mistake, common in childhood, of listening to my mother and following her advice. I thanked Lil. Guess the result. Right. Every Christmas and every birthday from then on, I got a fucking boring book from my fucking boring Aunt fucking boring Lil. First buses, then airplanes, then trucks, then cars, and on through the years until she ran out of conveyances and had to switch to buildings. I weep when I think of all the soldiers I could have had. Probably a battalion or 2. Ah, well, I realize the problem now. I was too young to have learned the following sentence. Hey, Lil, take your fucking railroad book and stick it up your ass and get me some goddamn soldiers. That would have nipped the whole thing in the bud. Does anybody really listen to that shitty music they play on the radio, FM radio music? What's it called? Adult, contemporary, classic rock, urban rhythm and blues? You know what the official business name for that shit is? Corporate standardized programming. Just what an art form needs. Corporate standardized programming, derived from scientific surveys conducted by soulless businessmen. Here's how bad it is. One nationwide chain that owns over 1,000 radio stations conducts weekly telephone polls asking listeners their opinions on 25 to 30 song hooks they play over the phone. Hooks that the radio people have already selected. Hooks are the short, repeated parts of pop songs that people remember easily. Depending on these polls, the radio chain decides which songs to place on their station's playlists. Weeks later, they record the hooks of all the songs they're currently playing on their stations across the country, label them by title and artist, and sell that information to record companies to help create more of the same bad music. They also sell the information to competing radio stations that want to play what the big chain is playing. All of this is done to prevent the possibility of original thinking somehow creeping into the system. Let me tell you something. In the first place, listening to music someone else has picked out is not my idea of a good time. Second, and more important, the fact that a lot of people in America actually like the music automatically means it sucks, especially since the people who like it have been told in advance by businessmen what it is they're supposed to like. Please save me from people who've been told what to like and then like it. In my opinion, if you're over 6 years of age and you're still getting your music from the radio, something is desperately wrong with you. I can only hope that somehow MP3 players and file sharing will destroy FM radio the way they're destroying record companies. Then, even though the air will probably never be safe to breathe again, maybe it will be safer to listen to. What is the purpose of having a person sign the Star-Spangled Banner? Don't deaf people know the words by now? Besides, signing can't possibly convey the exact personalized musical rendition the singer may be offering. How could a signer ever convey to a deaf person the elaborate note-bending vocal gymnastics that black female singers put the anthem through, especially those last few lines, "O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave," which sometimes can take more than 6 or 7 minutes to complete? Why, I should think a signer would break an arm trying to get that stuff across. Besides, what does the national anthem have to do with sports in the first place? I never understood that. Play ball. During the Middle Ages, it seems as though every castle had a group of trumpet players who stood in a line and played loud, intricate fanfares whenever something important happened. And it occurred to me that occasionally those guys must have needed to practice. You know, fanfare practice, 3 o'clock near the moat. It could be any number of reasons. New guys in the group, new fanfares, the brand new trumpets came in. So I'm wondering, when these guys did hold practice, and they kept playing the fanfares over and over, were the people working around the castle required to constantly keep snapping to attention? Did maybe some of them do it anyway, out of force of habit? Or did everyone pretty much ignore the fanfare since they knew it was really only practice? And if so, at a time like that, when everyone had been lulled into a false sense of security, what if the king decided to walk across the yard to visit his sister in the dungeon, and they blew a fanfare for him? Half the people would probably just keep on working. Would that piss him off, or would he understand? And what about coming to attention practice? Seems like fanfare practice would be a perfect time to hold it. You know, kill 2 birds. Fuck it. These are the sort of thoughts that hold me back in life. Here's why I'm opposed to singing. Singing strikes me as an indicator of limited language skills. My feeling is that if someone has a valid thought deserving of expression, but somehow that thought can't be communicated without the assistance of a banjo or a tambourine, then maybe it's a thought the rest of us don't need to hear. People will argue singing has more to do with expressing emotion than it does with expressing thought. Well, fine, but from my point of view, when it comes to expressing emotion, singing is not nearly as effective a tool as screaming. Let's face it, if you want to express emotion, screaming is where it's at. And to be fair, the more I think about it, the more I realize that singing itself is nothing more than a modified form of screaming. It's actually just carefully organized, socially acceptable screaming. And folks, I think we have enough screaming in the world as it is. Now, dancing, on the other hand, I can understand. Dancing is a highly developed form of jumping around, and there's certainly nothing wrong with jumping around. Jumping around is fine in my book. In fact, I feel it's essential. So please, feel free to jump around all you want. But if you fall and break a leg, don't come screaming to me. Write a song. Have you noticed that whenever someone at a large gathering tries to get the attention of the crowd on a public address system, they always yell into the microphone, "Attention! Attention, please! Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please!" Don't these people understand that the whole purpose of a voice amplifying system is to amplify the voice? I think the idea is that when you speak into it, it makes your voice sound louder. Maybe I'm way off on this, but it seems to me that if there's a device that makes your voice sound louder, there's probably no reason to yell into it. I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong on this. I'm willing to listen, but hold it down, will you? I'm tired of people using their cars as biographical information centers, informing the world of their sad sack lives and boring interests. Keep that shit to yourself. I don't want to know what college you went to, who you intend to vote for, or what your plan is for world peace. I don't care if you visited the Grand Canyon, Mount Rushmore, or the birthplace of Wink Martindale, and I'm not interested in what radio station you listen to or what bands you like. In fact, I'm not interested in you in any way except to see you in my rear view mirror. Furthermore, I can do without your profession of faith in God, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Peter Cottontail, whoever the fuck it is you've turned your life over to. Please, keep your superstitions private. I can't tell you how happy it would make me to someday drive up to a flaming auto wreck and see smoke curling up around one of those little fish symbols with Jesus written inside it. And as far as I'm concerned, you can include the Darwin fish with feet evolution symbol too. Far too cute for my taste. So keep the personal and autobiographical messages to yourself. Here's an idea. Maybe you could paste them up inside your car, where you can see them and I can't. Here's another segment of the bumper sticker population that ought to be locked into portable toilets and set on fire. The ones who want us to know how well their kids are doing in school. Doing well, that is, according to today's lowered standards. We are the proud parents of an honors student at the Franklin School, or the Midvale Academy, or whatever other innocent-sounding name has been assigned to the indoctrination center where their child has been sent to be stripped of his individuality and turned into an obedient, soul-dead conformist member of the American consumer culture. What kind of empty people need to validate themselves through the achievements of a child? How would you like to live with a couple of these blockheads? Say, Justin, how's that science project coming along? Fuck you, Dad, you simple-minded prick. Mind your own business and pass the Fruit Loops. Fucking cunt dork. Here are a few parental bumper stickers I'd like to see. We are the proud parents of a child whose self-esteem is sufficient that he doesn't need us promoting his minor scholastic achievements on the back of our car. That would be refreshing. We are the proud parents of a child who has resisted his teacher's attempts to break his spirit and bend him to the will of his corporate masters. A little Marxist, but what the fuck? Here's something realistic. We have a daughter in public school who hasn't been knocked up yet. And for the boy, we have a son in public school who hasn't shot any of his classmates yet. But he does sell drugs to your honors student. Plus, he knocked up your daughter. And what about those parents who aren't too proud of their children? We are the embarrassed parents of a cross-eyed, drooling little nitwit who, at the age of 10, not only continues to wet the bed, but also shits on the school bus. Something like that on the back of the car might give the child a little more incentive. Get him to try a little harder next semester. Here's another item you can't see while it's still on your body. A scab on the top of your head. You ever had that? Sure you have. Little scab on the top of your head. Not a big, red, juicy blood scab like you get when someone at work hits you in the head with a Stilson wrench. Just a little scaly, scabby, dry spot. You find it one day by accident when you're scratching your head. You come across it as if by good luck. Whoa, what's this? A scab. Hot shit. A scab. I love fucking scabs. This is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to pick off my scab and look at it. Oh boy. I can't wait to pick off my scab and place it down on a contrasting material such as a black velvet tablecloth in order to see it in greater relief. Oh boy. I can't wait to pick off my scab. This is going to be a lot of fun. But wait just a minute. It's not ready to come off yet. It's immature. It's still not ripe. It's not ready for plucking. I'll save this for Thursday. Thursday will be a good day. I have only half a day of work on Thursday. I'll come home early, masturbate in the kitchen, wash the floor, and then I'll watch the Montel Williams show. And while I do, I'll pick off my scab. Oh boy. I can't wait to pick off my scab. This is going to be a lot of fun. So you wait, and you wait. And you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and you try not to knock it off by accident with the little plastic comb you bought in the vending machine at the Easy Living Motel when you hooked up with the two skanky-looking chicks who gave you the clap that night. And now, finally, Thursday arrives. It's harvest time on the top of your head. So you come home early, and you masturbate, but you do it in your sister's bedroom just to give it a little extra thrill, know what I mean? Then you shampoo the rug, and you watch the Montel Williams show. Pretty interesting topic. Women who take it up the ass for 50 cents. Not the best show he's ever done, but you know something? Not bad either. And now it's time to go get this little scab. But you want to proceed carefully. You want to pry this thing off slowly and evenly around the perimeter of the scab so that it lifts off all in one piece. You don't want it to break into pieces. Who needs a fragmented scab? Not me. I don't need parts that badly. I'm not that disturbed. What you really want, what you really need, what you really must have is a complete, whole scab you can set down, study, make notes on, and perhaps write a series of penetrating articles for Scab Aficionado magazine. Who knows? You might rise to the top of the scab world in a big hurry. It's a small community, and they need people at the top. And so you proceed, with a single fingernail extended, always choosing your best peeling and scraping nail. You find your way through the thicket of hair and locate the target. You make a careful initial probe, and surprisingly, the prey yields easily, coming off all in one piece. Then you lift it off carefully, through the hair, and position it on the tip of your picking finger. And you look at the little thing, so pathetic there on your finger, isolated, alone, out of its environment. And your heart begins to melt. So you take your new friend carefully between thumb and forefinger and gently place it back on your head, setting it loose in the wild, and you feel the better man. You're in harmony with your body. Think of it as catch and release. While we Americans have been busy creating politically correct euphemisms for old people, thereby making their lives infinitely easier, we've also been working on our poor people language problem. And we now have language that takes all the pain out of being poor. Having no money these days is easier than ever. I can remember when I was young that poor people lived in slums. Not anymore. These days, the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. It's so much nicer for them. And yet they're still considered socially marginal. But as it turns out, many of these socially marginal people receive public assistance, once known as welfare. Before that, it was called being on relief or being on the dole. And at that time, being on the dole was the worst thing you could say about a family. They're on the dole. People were ashamed. It was tough to get a date if you were on the dole. But public assistance, That sounds good. Who of us hasn't benefited from some form of public assistance? Even huge businesses and agricultural interests receive public assistance. Ditto all the wealthiest taxpayers. So apparently, there's no shame attached to being on the dole after all. In this country, about the only thing worse than having no money is having no place to live. And over the years, those with no place to live have had many different names. Vagrants, tramps, hobos, drifters, and transients come to mind. Which name applied to a person sometimes depended on his, God, this is difficult to say, lifestyle. There, it's out. But can having no place to live actually be a lifestyle? Well, it seems to me that if you're going to use a questionable word like lifestyle at all, you should be forced to use it across the board. After all, if there's a gay lifestyle, which I doubt, and a suburban lifestyle, which seems more arguable, it stands to reason there must be a homeless lifestyle. And even, one would assume, a prison lifestyle. Indeed, is it possible that those doomed souls in places like Buchenwald were actually enjoying a concentration camp lifestyle? If they were, don't tell their families. You'll be misunderstood. And taking this unfortunate word to its ultimate logical extreme, I will not be surprised to someday see one of those spiritual mediums doing a TV show called Lifestyles of the Dead. Incidentally, shouldn't a group of mediums be called media? Just asking. Back to the subject. Vagrants, tramps, hobos, drifters, and transients. Without using a dictionary, which in many cases is no help at all, here are the distinctions I picked up in years past by listening to how people used these words. The sense I got was vagrants simply had no money. Tramps and hobos had no money, but they moved around. Drifters moved around, but occasionally worked for a while, and then drifted on, whereas tramps and hobos didn't work at all. We'll get to transients in a moment. There's one other distinction between tramps and hobos that I think is worth mentioning. The word tramp might also have been used to describe the young woman your son brought home. Rarely did anyone's son bring home a hobo, unless, of course, he was into the gay hobo lifestyle. Actually, there weren't too many gay hobos. That's because if a hobo didn't have a home, he certainly didn't have a closet either to be in or come out of. Sudden thought. Hobo rhymes with homo. Another way to categorize this class of people was to call them transients. Sometimes on Skid Row, where they had a lot of bums and winos, we'll get to them in a minute, you'd see a cheap hotel with a sign that said, "Transients Welcome." Transients were like drifters, except transients seemed to stay in cities, whereas drifters moved through small towns and rural areas. You had to move through those places because they weren't as tolerant as cities. They didn't have signs that said, "Drifters Welcome." It was usually just the opposite. Ask Clint Eastwood. By the way, isn't a hotel that says it welcomes transients a little like a restaurant that says it prefers people with stomachs? Just asking. First cousin to a transient hotel was a flop house, a magnificently descriptive piece of language that has all but disappeared. Just for the record, these days, transient hotels are called limited service lodgings. Several cuts above all these places were furnished rooms, these days known by the phrase SROs, short for single room occupancy. So, staying on track here, we began this section with people who have no place to live, which brings us to today's hot designation, the homeless, also known as street people. When I was a boy, we never heard those words. A dirty, drunk man on the street who wanted money was normally called a bum. Simple word, 3 letters, 1 syllable, bum. And a bum was usually also a wino. You know, a substance abuser. He had a chemical dependency. Little did we know. By the way, it should be pointed out that bum might also have been used to describe the young man your daughter brought home. Many's the bum who didn't pass muster with Dad. I wonder how many of those bums the daughters brought home wound up marrying the tramps the sons brought home. That might explain all those homeless children. But the word homeless is useless. It's messy, it's inaccurate, it's not descriptive. It attempts to cover too many things: poverty, alcoholism, drug addiction, schizophrenia, no place to live, and begging on the street. Homeless should mean only one thing: no home, no place to live. Many of these people who beg on the street actually have places to live. I had one guy tell me he needed money to buy tires for his van. I gave him $1. I considered him both honest and enterprising. The first word I remember for these people was bag ladies. I don't know why men were left out of this. I never heard anyone say bag men. I guess that's because a bag man is a different thing. A bag man is someone who delivers bribes or illegal gambling money. Probably in today's evasive, dishonest, politically correct language, they'd be called bag persons. In my opinion, the closest we're ever going to get to a good descriptive name for these lovable, grimy folks is street people. And by the way, isn't it ironic that shopping bags and shopping carts, symbols of plenty, should be the objects most preferred by people who have nothing at all? I guess if you have nothing, you need something to carry it around in, especially if you're crazy. That's what a lot of these street people are, you know. They're crazy. I avoid terms like mentally disturbed and emotionally impaired. You can't let the politically correct language police dictate the way you express yourself. I prefer plain language: crazy, insane, nuts. The whole world is crazy and many of its inhabitants are insane. Or am I just nuts? And for the most part, we humans do enjoy being colorful and creative when describing the condition of someone who's crazy. Here are a couple of descriptions of craziness that I enjoy. One wheel in the sand. Seat back, not in the full upright position. Not playing with a full bag of jacks. Doesn't have both feet in the end zone. Lives out where the buses don't run. The cheese fell off his cracker a long time ago. His factory's still open, but it's making something else. Here's an odd one. His squeegee doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the pail. I think you have to have some serious time management problems to be sitting around thinking up stuff like that. But there you are. This next one sounds really good, but I confess I don't quite understand it. He belongs in a cotton box. For some reason, it sounds exactly right, though, doesn't it? And if you're going to be irreverent about describing crazy people, you can't get soft when it comes to describing the places we keep them, or used to keep them. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan decided the best place to keep them was on the streets, which actually makes a lot of sense because the streets are nothing more than a slightly larger open-air asylum anyway. But around the turn of the 19th century, many states had places called institutions for the feeble-minded. That name seemed too long for some people, so instead they referred to them as madhouses. They took him to the madhouse. Boy, was he mad. Then these places became insane asylums, mental homes, mental institutions, and finally, psychiatric facilities. I have 3 personal favorites. I always liked the Hoo Hoo Hotel. To me, that says it all. Here's another one that's not bad. The Puzzle Factory. It has a certain class to it, doesn't it? But if you prefer a gentler approach, you really can't beat the Enchanted Kingdom. They took him away to the Enchanted Kingdom. And guess how they took him there? The Twinkie Mobile. Now that's descriptive language. When I see a symphony orchestra, 100 or so people playing some incredibly difficult piece of music in complete and perfect unison, as if they were a single organism, I remind myself that each one of them started the day in a different kitchen. 100 different musicians in 100 different kitchens scattered across the city. And sometimes I find myself wondering how many of them had eggs that morning and how many of them chose cereal. I try to guess whether the percentage of muffin eaters is greater among the strings or the brass section. I ponder whether or not the percussionists drink a lot of coffee, whereas perhaps the piccolo players lean more toward flavored teas. I don't know why these thoughts come to me, but they sure fill the time between scherzos. Catholic kids are stupid. They don't know how to handle a pedophile priest. Here's what you do. First of all, you don't get all scared and do whatever he tells you. Who wants to get sucked off by a 43-year-old clergyman with beard stubble? Not me. Instead, what you do is you kick him in the nuts. You kick him squarely in the nuts and you get the fuck out of there as fast as you can and you go tell somebody right away. You tell as many grown-up people as you can. One of them is bound to believe you. That's what you do. You don't wait 30 years. You kick the priest in the nuts and say, "Fuck you, Father, I don't do that shit. Try Jimmy Fogarty. I heard he blew the choir master." And you're out the door. And don't forget to take your rosary. On second thought, leave the rosary. A lot of good it did you in the first place. 3 short stories. The Velvet Hat. She wore a velvet hat. She walked down the steps slowly, as if each one were a significant achievement. Her arm, bent severely at the elbow, pinned her purse closely to her side. The surface of the last few steps was cracked and uneven, and so she extended her tiny arm to grip the railing. At that moment, a man ran up and jammed an entire box of peppermints into her mouth. Not Martha Stewart. Vinny had just squeezed off 3 really vicious, warm, partially liquid farts, and was now trying with all his might to suck down from the back of his nose a huge gob of hardened snot that felt as big as a human embryo. Ignoring the dog shit encrusted under his fingernails from several weeks earlier, he reached deep into his throat, pulled loose some partially digested food, swallowed it again, and continued to make hamburger patties for the kids. Garnish. The man in the tweed hat stood by a tree, rolling a half-dried snot between his thumb and forefinger. Moments later, the snot now completely dry, he strolled casually past a sidewalk cafe and gently flicked it into a young lady's lemonade. Why do you always finish your sentences? Yeah. It's something that's been bothering you for a long time? Yeah. Well, it's a habit that started in grade school. When the teacher called on another kid, sometimes the kid would start to answer and then get stuck, so I would supply the rest of the answer. And this habit has stayed with you ever since that time. But there must be something you can do about it? The only thing I could do about it would be to find some person who might be willing to finish your sentences? Yeah. If I could just find someone to finish my sentences, it would put a little balance in your life? Right. But why does it have to be someone else? Why couldn't it be the same person? Why couldn't the same person whose sentences I finish be the same person who finishes your sentences? I don't know. Let's ask this man over here. What can I do for you fellows? The American Retail Association reminds you that next Sunday is a Person I Know Day. It's a lot like Mother's Day or Father's Day, but instead of honoring your parents, you take the time to honor some other person you know. It can be anyone at all. Mailman, delivery boy, gas station attendant, drugstore clerk, even that interesting fellow who stands on the corner all day displaying his penis. Any person you know is eligible. In fact, every person you know is eligible. So why not honor them all? Go out today and buy gifts for all the people you know. It's the perfect way of showing your love and saying, "Hi, I'm sure glad I know you." And when you think about it, you'll probably be in store for some nice gifts yourself on a Person I Know Day. In fact, the more people you know, the more gifts you'll receive. So go for a long walk today and introduce yourself to every person you see. Just walk up and say, "Don't I know you? If not, I'd sure like to." Then give them your address and tell them to send you a gift. You'll make lots and lots of new friends. And you'll be helping the economy. I've never seen anyone cleaning a church. I've seen many things, but never a cleaning crew working in a church, vacuuming, mopping, dusting the statues, and scrubbing the altar. You know why? I figured it out. Churches don't need to be cleaned. God does it. It's one of those miracles. That's how they know it's a church in the first place. Here's how it works. After a church has been built, the owners wait 6 months and then look inside. If it's clean, they know it's a church. So they get ready for the grand opening. And from that day on, they never have to clean it. No matter what kind of crud, grime, or muck the sinners track in, the place remains spotless. But just between you and me, a little Windex on the stained glass wouldn't hurt once in a while. It would help bring out all those bright, pretty colors they use to show the torture and bleeding of the saints. Hi, I'm Our Lady of the TV. I'm here to say hello and to make sure everyone prays real hard for peace. Also, the last time I was here, I forgot my sunglasses. Has anyone seen my sunglasses? A stagehand hands her the glasses. Thank you. Hold my purse, please, would you? She hands him her purse and puts on the sunglasses. I know that many of you lead a pointless existence. You have dead-end jobs, bad marriages, and children who hate you because you've ruined their lives. I also know you look to symbols like me to provide solace and hope. Well, here's the deal. I have no solace to offer, and frankly, there is no hope. I'm just an illusion that means nothing. So work it out for yourselves. If you ask me, you're not trying hard enough. Thank you. I'll be back in a few years. And please, stop bothering my son with stupid requests like winning the lottery. To the stagehand, give me the purse. Letter to a friend. Dear Trevor, the reason I'm writing is because I've lost your address and have no way of getting in touch with you. For that reason, chances are you won't receive this, in which case you should not feel obligated to reply. If, however, this letter does reach you and you wish to answer, please enclose your current address so I'll know where to send this. By the way, you can ignore the return address on this envelope, as I'm moving next week, and although I don't yet have my new address, I'll be sending it along as soon as I hear from you. Should you have any trouble locating me, please be assured I will contact you as soon as I have my new phone, so by all means give me a call and let me have your number. If it turns out that I'm unable to reach you, please don't hesitate to get in touch, as I always mention it to my friends whenever neither of us hears from the other. Should you encounter any trouble reaching me, please let me know and I will get back to you at once. Then again, if you are unable to reach me, perhaps it would be better not to get in touch, because I will most likely be trying to get a hold of you. And of course, if I do reach you, please let me know immediately. Conversely, if I don't reach you, you will probably hear from me right away. Well, evening is rolling around, and as they say in Portugal, it's time to say goodbye. I hope you receive this before you mail your letter. It's so good to communicate this way. Sincerely, Spurla Vaughan. P.S. Should this letter be lost in transit, please disregard. True fact. I saw a guy on the street wearing a T-shirt that said Couples for Christ, but he was alone. And I wondered, what would Jesus think? What's the difference between a drop and a droplet? After all, if you divide a drop into smaller parts, all you get is smaller drops. Big or little, a drop is a drop. Same thing with a crumb. But the odd thing about a crumb is that if you cut a crumb in half, you don't get 2 half crumbs. You get 2 crumbs. To me, that sounds like magic. I gotta ask David Copperfield how they do that. When it comes to God's existence, I'm not an atheist and I'm not an agnostic. I'm an acrostic. The whole thing puzzles me. I saw a homeless guy sitting on the sidewalk yammering to himself and repeatedly punctuating his remarks with, "You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?" And I thought, for God's sake, the man is talking to himself. If he doesn't know what he's saying, who would? True fact. On June 8th, 1995, Glacier National Park was closed because of too much snow. Colin Powell spent his entire adult life as a soldier, trying to devise the most efficient ways of killing foreigners for his country. Then he became a diplomat, trying to devise the most efficient ways of getting foreigners to cooperate with his country. Tough sell. Whenever I hear about parents who have 9 or 10 children, the only thing I wonder is how they survive the birthday parties. I recently learned there are 3 people still alive who can do the minuet. Unfortunately, only one of them is able to move without a wheelchair. I think they should have a hotline that never answers, for people who don't follow advice in the first place. I finally figured out what email is for. It's for communicating with people you'd rather not talk to. You know what I like the most about the NCAA basketball tournament? 63 losers. The United States most closely resembles a huge, poorly thought out, sick joke. Health tip from the American Medical Association: never pour corrosive chemicals on your testicles. A female teacher seduced a 14-year-old boy, and he turned her into the police. What was this kid thinking? Is he fucking crazy? Or gay? I would have kept that kind of thing real quiet, at least until I graduated. Cigarette companies market heavily to young people. They need young customers because their product kills the older ones. It's the only product that, if used as intended, kills the consumer. More people write poetry than read it. I wish the ecology people would save one species that would make a dramatic comeback and then wipe us out. True fact. There is actually an erotic wrestler. When I'm in someone's house and I see something I want that's small and easy to conceal, I steal it. It's my belief that property belongs to the person who wants it most. Whatever became of alpha-carotene? I wonder what kind of masturbation fantasies Stephen King has. I also wonder if anyone has ever masturbated while fantasizing about having sex with a live chicken. Usually I wonder about these things while I'm masturbating. Isaiah said, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks." Let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard of someone who made a fortune selling plowshares and pruning hooks? You're probably thinking to yourselves right now, I wonder what he thinks I'm thinking right now. Or you may be thinking, I wonder when he's going to say, you're probably thinking to yourselves right now, I wonder what he thinks I'm thinking right now. Or you could be thinking, I wonder when he's going to wonder when well, maybe not. Hey guys, did you ever get your balls caught in the toaster when it was turned all the way up to dark brown and your wife was trying to rub butter on your balls and your pit bull was in the kitchen and he really loves butter? Ugh, it's an awful feeling. When I'm writing, I always like to have the TV playing in the background. I usually try to find a program that's interesting enough to leave on, but stupid enough to ignore. I think sometimes the word overseas is pluralized unnecessarily. The way I look at it, New York to London is oversea. After all, there's only one sea in between them. This statement is untrue. Regarding astrology, an obstetrician or a maternity nurse who weighs between 100 and 200 pounds actually exerts a greater gravitational force on a baby at the time of its birth than do any of the distant planets that are said to influence a person's personality and destiny. Why aren't these bulky, proximate objects factored into the astrological charts that are so carefully laid out? There are caregivers and there are caretakers, and yet the two words are not opposites. Why is this? Whenever I hear that someone lives in a gated community, I think of places like Auschwitz. True fact. There is actually such an organization as the Paralyzed Veterans of America. And I wonder, who answers the phone? Until you're a certain age, you don't have anything to put behind you. That's what life seems to be. A process of doing things that eventually you just want to put behind you. There are now murderous turf wars going on in which people are being brutally killed over the right to sell a substance called ecstasy. You know something you don't see anymore? The sacking of a city. Rome and Constantinople were good examples. Next time we win a war, we ought to sack the capital of the country we defeat. U.S. troops sacked Baghdad. Wouldn't that be good? I guess we do our sacking in subtler ways, through the business community. I think they ought to have really fast escalators that you have to jump on and off. And if you get hurt, too bad. When I notice a little dead fly on the windowsill, one that wasn't there the day before, I always wonder how he died. I wonder if he had a stroke, or maybe a little fly heart attack. Then I think that maybe he's just pretending to be dead so I won't swat him. So I swat him. Here's a tip from the Power and Light Company on saving energy. If you have elderly people living with you, cut back on their heat and light. Old people often exaggerate how cold they feel. I was thinking the other day that one kid who's really going to have emotional problems when she grows up is that John Benet Ramsey. You know, because of all the media attention, her parents being under suspicion, the speculations about sexual abuse. Jesus, that kind of thing would fuck any kid up. And then I remembered, hey, she was the one who got killed. And I thought, it's a good thing she's dead. At least she won't have to suffer. Tell Pierre I said hello. A two-man conversation. I'm going up to San Francisco this weekend. Oh, well, tell Pierre I said hello. Actually, I knew you'd say that, so I took the liberty of calling him and telling him you said hello. He said in that case to tell you he also says hello. So, hello from Pierre. And he said to add, how's it going? Oh, well, that's great. Well, tell him everything's going just fine, and don't forget to say, how are you? Well, he and I knew you would ask that, and so Pierre has authorized me to say that he's glad you're fine, but that he hasn't been feeling too well lately. Oh, well, tell him I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope it isn't serious. He says he knew you would be sorry to hear that, but he thinks it will blow over. Well, tell him, if it doesn't, I have a great doctor in San Francisco. Ginny and I met him in Hawaii when we were there last year. Pierre says he knew you had a great doctor, but he wasn't aware he was located in San Francisco. He also says he didn't know you and Ginny had gone to Hawaii. He thought it was Cancun. And he also says, how's Ginny? Tell him Ginny is dead. Well, I'm sure he didn't know, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that he's real sorry to hear about that, and I'm willing to bet anything he offers his condolences. And most likely he'll also say that if there's anything he can do, anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Excuse me, Hank, I'd love to keep talking, but I have to go buy underwear. Oh, well, Pierre says there's a sale at the Gap. Get fucked, Hank. I don't know why people got all excited about that guy Jeffrey Dahmer. Because he broke a few laws? So what? There's nothing wrong with killing 12 people, having sex with their corpses, masturbating on them, eating their flesh, and then saving the heads in the refrigerator. What's wrong with that? Nothing. So far, nobody has been able to explain to me what it was Jeffrey Dahmer did that was so wrong. First of all, let's remember, wrong is a relative term. Who's to say what's wrong? Who are we to judge? Put yourself in the other man's shoes. Who among you, under certain circumstances, might not kill 12 people, have sex with their corpses, masturbate on them, eat their flesh, and then save the heads in the refrigerator? Not one of you, I suspect, so cut the guy a little slack. Always remember, there but for the grace of God go I. Here are some things you should not say if you encounter a comedian. First, if you're with another person at the time, don't say to your friend, you better watch out, he'll put you in one of his skits. We don't like that. It's not funny. And by the way, we don't do skits. Second, if you meet him while you're at your job, do not say, "You ought to work here. You'd get a lot of material." It's not true. Just because you work with a bunch of simpletons doesn't mean it translates into comedy. Third, if you work at a store and we're shopping there, and some small mix-up occurs that needs to be sorted out, don't say to a coworker, "He's going to put this in one of his routines." He's not. One more thing we don't like. When you tell us something that you think is funny, and then you say, "You can use that if you want," we don't want to use it. Believe me. I stopped behind a small beat-up camper at a red light, and I noticed 3 bumper stickers. "Dare to resist drugs and violence," "There's no excuse for domestic abuse," and "Stop senior abuse." And I thought, I'm really glad I don't live with those folks. I'd bet anything they were on their way to the hospital emergency room or perhaps intensive psychiatric counseling. If I'd caught up and looked inside their vehicle, I'm sure it would have resembled a Johnson & Johnson showroom. Tune in tonight for a full-length movie on America's favorite new date show, Dinner, Movie, and a Hump. Tonight, your hosts, Dagwood Parkhaven and Candace Nooch, cook up a delicious whale chowder and breast of hyena on a bed of diced badger as they present an award-winning film about an amnesia victim, Who the Fuck Am I? Starring Esther Sylvester, Kermit McDermott, Chi-Chi Amici, and Skeeter Van Meter, and introducing Keith Bunghole as the queer. After the movie and the food, Dagwood and Candace will tear off a lengthy piece of ass on the kitchen table, taking turns being on top and demonstrating several interesting new sexual positions, including the Baghdad twirl and the Bosnian dick knot. Some of our best work with euphemisms involves the subject that makes us the most uncomfortable: death. Our most common euphemism for death is to say the person passed away or passed on. If you believe in an afterlife, you may prefer crossed over or crossed over to the other side. Whenever I hear that someone has crossed over to the other side, I always picture Fifth Avenue. Then there's the official term for dying, the doctor term. In this case, the person simply expires, like a magazine subscription. 1 month, he just doesn't show up. Unfortunately, he can't renew. Or so they say. Better check with the Hindus on that. Now, continuing. In this current age of specialization and increasing detachment, if the person in question dies in a hospital, it's called a terminal episode, although the insurance company sees it as negative patient care outcome. That one's actually kind of nice, isn't it? And if the negative patient care outcome was caused by a medical malpractice, then it's referred to as a therapeutic misadventure. Colorful term. No wonder so many doctors are leaving their practices. It's hard to get therapeutic misadventure insurance. But by far, the most creative terms we've come up with to comfort ourselves about death are the ones that describe the rituals survivors put themselves through. We owe a lot of this softened language to the funeral business, or as they prefer to be known now, the death care industry. They have completely transformed the language used to describe what happens following a death. In years past, it went like this. The old man died, so the undertaker picked up the body, brought it to the funeral home, and put it in a casket. People sent flowers and held a wake. After the funeral, they put the coffin in a hearse and drove it to the cemetery where the dead man was buried in a grave. But in these days of heightened sensitivity, the same series of events produces what sounds like a completely different experience. The senior citizen passed away, so the funeral director claimed the remains of the decedent, took them to the memorial chapel, and placed them in a burial container. Grieving survivors sent floral tributes to be displayed in the slumber room, where the grief coordinator conducted the viewing. Following the memorial service, the funeral coach transported the departed to the Garden of Remembrance, where his human remains were interred in their final resting place. Huh? What's that? Did somebody die or something? This item demonstrates how stupid the average American is. Every 90 minutes, someone in this country is hit by a train. A train, okay? Trains are on tracks. They can't come and get you. They can't surprise you when you step off a curb. You have to go to them. Got that? There are 5,000 highway rail crossing accidents annually. To counter this problem, the Department of Transportation issued the following rules for people to follow at railroad crossings. Don't drive around lowered gates. Okay, got it. Don't cross in front of a train. Never thought of that. Don't walk on the tracks. Check. Be aware that trains can't stop quickly. Good to know. Always expect a train. This would probably be tied in with the fact that these are railroad tracks. Is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong on this. Look for more than one train. Frankly, this is one I never thought of. Maybe if I remember the others, this one will take care of itself. Here's something to think about. In the course of history's wars, many battles took place in the woods and the countryside. So sometimes I picture a soldier waking up on a spring morning, wildflowers growing around his tent, birds singing in the trees, perhaps the comforting sound of a brook trickling by in the near distance. And then a 10-pound cannonball hits him in the face. It's an interesting thought, don't you think? I wanted to be a Boy Scout, but I had all the wrong traits. Apparently, they were looking for kids who were trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Unfortunately, at that time I was devious, fickle, obstructive, hostile, rude, mean, defiant, glum, extravagant, cowardly, dirty, and sacrilegious. So I waited a few years and joined the Army. In New York State, the law says that the ingredients of hot dogs can legally include a certain amount or percentage of insect parts and rat droppings. It's permissible by law. So in New York, when you eat a hot dog, you more or less have to hope that the hot dog you're eating contains only the most nutritious parts of the insects, not just legs and antennae, and that the rats whose feces you're eating were on good, heart-healthy diets. I've been enjoying a new band from England. It's called So Long Mate. It's a 5-man heavy metal band. And the reason it's called So Long Mate is because at the end of each performance, the other 4 members of the band kill the lead singer. As a result, the music has a certain urgency to it. Also, it keeps the tours nice and short. It's basically one night, and then back they go to L.A. to hold auditions. The band plans to have an album ready in the year 2037. Hello, this is David Nipplegripper, another insufferable Hollywood movie star who wants you to help some cause or charity merely because I say so. Today, I want to tell you about little Danny Pendejo. Danny needs your help. He was born with no torso. His legs are fine, his arms are fine, and his head is okay, except for one really big caved-in part on top. But he has no torso. Won't you help by being a torso donor? Even a torso that's too big will be better than no torso at all. Thank you. This is David Nipplegripper reminding you to see my new movie, Breasts on the Moon. Another sign of America's decline. Because a few people are sensitive to peanuts and have allergies that might kill them, America's commercial airlines had to stop serving those little bags of peanuts. It wasn't sufficient that the affected people could simply refuse the peanuts when they were offered. The argument was made that the people who did eat the peanuts were putting peanut dust in the air, creating a health hazard for the victims. What a load of shit. If someone is in danger of dying from inhaling peanut dust, why aren't they dead already? Why didn't they die at a baseball game or at the circus? America has gone soft. Instructions. Follow carefully. Release the handle by pulling down the strap and tightening the fasteners. Press the button and remove the safety cap. Then turn the knob to unleash the spring and wind the excess slack onto the spool. Loosen the screws on the plate lid and insert the tabs into the slots. Rotate the control switch a quarter of a turn before lowering the two levers. Then drop the main crank into a neutral position. Be careful not to unscrew the housing before engaging the catch. Plug in and you're set to go. If smoke fills the room, read the troubleshooting guide at the rear of this manual. I like the good actors, the real actors, the ones who keep their lives private. Sean Penn, Harvey Keitel, Alan Arkin, Robert Duvall, Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, Johnny Depp, Robert De Niro, Gary Oldman, William Hurt, Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, Gary Sinise, Christopher Walken, Gary Busey. They keep to themselves. You don't see them appearing all the time on TV. They don't cooperate with Access Hollywood and Entertainment Tonight. They're actors, not celebrities. They keep to themselves. That's why their work is so good. Good for them. Dear Ma, even though you're dead, I wanted you to know I'm doing real well. No thanks to you, I might add. I now have my own TV show, and it's getting very high ratings. I play the part of a guy whose mother dies, but it doesn't really bother him. I know they don't have good reception where you are, so I'm going to send you a tape. Do you think a tape will be okay in the intense heat? Love, Dirk. I don't like ass kissers, flag wavers, or team players. I like people who buck the system, individualists. I often warn kids, somewhere along the way, someone is going to tell you there is no I in team. What you should tell them is, maybe not, but there is an I in independence, individuality, and integrity. Avoid teams at all cost. Keep your circle small. Never join a group that has a name. If they say, we're the so-and-sos, take a walk. And if somehow you must join, if it's unavoidable, such as a union or a trade association, go ahead and join, but don't participate. It will be your death. And if they tell you you're not a team player, just congratulate them on being so observant. You ever run over a guy with your car and you kind of panic, so you back up and you run over him a second time? And then you realize you have to get the fuck out of there before the police show up, so you put it in drive again and run over him a third time. What the fuck? Might as well. What else you gonna do at that point? Drive around them? Anyway, as you drive away, did you ever reflect on the fact that each time you ran over him, the crunching sound got fainter and fainter? That's because he already had two good deep grooves pressed into him that you kept driving through. Parents are such fucking doofuses. I saw a bumper sticker that said, proud parents of a sailor. What the fuck is so special about being a sailor? How about proud parents of a tailor? Isn't a tailor worthy too? The whole proud parent thing is bullshit. Pretty soon I'm expecting to see proud parents of a child. Have a little self-respect, will you? You never see children with bumper stickers that say, proud son of Mr. and Mrs. Clayman. That's because Mr. and Mrs. Clayman are such fucking doofuses. I don't think there's really such a thing as morality. I think it's a human construct designed to facilitate the control of people. Values, ethics, legal standards. All of these things are human-generated, and they're lumped under some vague idea called morality. But suppose humans got it wrong. Suppose there's no actual objective morality. Suppose there's just a natural, worldly, secular, common-sense standard of behavior whose purpose is what's best for getting along and what's best for survival. That would be a good system. Why should a system like that be overlaid with a sense of spooky, mystical, judgmental oversight? When this Catholic guy, Cardinal Bernardin of Chicago, died, they praised him for accepting death gracefully. Excuse me, but isn't that what you're supposed to do? Accept death gracefully? What's that? You say many people don't accept death gracefully? I see. So now we're evaluating people's behavior and praising them based on what other people don't do. Wonderful. I don't think people should ever get credit for doing something they're supposed to do, even if it's rarely done by others. Condemn the ones who don't do it if you like, but don't praise the ones who do it. Only one of the two behaviors is worth commenting on, not both. You know those broken white lines that separate the lanes on a highway? Have you ever counted them? If you do, you'll find that there are 100 of them every mile. It's true. Each line is 100th of a mile from the next one. Count them for yourself as you track your distance on the odometer. Just count how many there are each 10th of a mile. There should be 10. But while you're counting, don't forget to keep an eye out for that big 18-wheeler up ahead parked sideways in the middle of the road. Hi, I'm Ferris Banderhead, another bothersome movie star who tells people to support some charity or other in order to make myself appear concerned and to increase my popularity. Not to mention easing the guilt I feel for having much more than I deserve. But enough about me. April is National Hunger Month. In Beverly Hills, we're having our annual hunger banquet and gala called Hors d'oeuvres for Ethiopia. Send in your dollars today and help us feed people around the world who could certainly use a nice hors d'oeuvre. And remember, the sooner we conquer hunger, the sooner we can start working on upset stomach. Thank you. This is Ferris Banderhead reminding you to see my new spy movie, The Snotlocker Papers. I'm Dr. Mannheim of the Mannheim Rehab and Recovery Center. People ask me, how can I tell when one of my loved ones needs help with a substance abuse problem? And I say, if you see them lying in a corner, naked, in a puddle of their own filth, it may be time to think about counseling. Call Mannheim today, and we'll come over and pick them up. But before we get there, please clean up the filth. Uncle Blitzen was a troubled man. As a child visiting backstage at a concert, he was fondled by a viola player and lived the rest of his days with an unnatural fear of stringed instruments. He was one of the 900 people present at the Jonestown massacre, but he threw away the Kool-Aid and only pretended to be dead. When everyone stopped moving, he looted the corpses. Subsequently, he moved to Stockholm, where he became the town scumbag. Years later, he re-emerged in England as a self-proclaimed bishop, roaming the Midlands with a band of rogue altar boys, administering forced communion to lapsed Catholics. He died during Hurricane Shlomo, in front of an adult sex shop, when the store's sign blew down and he was crushed to death by a giant neon dildo. Uncle Pinocchio had 23 separate and distinct personalities. Unfortunately, all of them were unpleasant. He believed that Porky Pig cartoons represented actual events, and he once stabbed his dog with a ceremonial Japanese saber in a dispute over a lamb bone. He always wore a three-piece suit. It didn't have a vest. The jacket was just torn in half. He drifted from job to job, balloon vendor, freelance daredevil, and stoop laborer among them. He finally settled in his basement, where he lost his mind trying to invent a rectal harmonica. After that, the family kept him tied to a linden tree in the backyard, where they fed him with a slingshot. After 6 years, they released him on Mussolini's birthday, whereupon he married a passive-aggressive librarian who later beat him to death with a dictionary stand. Uncle Shadrach felt he was special because one of his testicles was shaped like a Brazil nut and the other like a cashew. He loved to run up to women screaming, "You want some mixed nuts?" He told me that in his younger days he was quite a lover and once fucked a girl so hard her freckles came off. Alas, he didn't marry well. His wife, Chlorine, looked like something that might be found in the dumpster behind a cloning center. Her PMS was so bad she had a mood swing installed in her backyard. As a child, while watching a gay pride parade, she was run over by a float full of lesbians and was eventually found dead in a military barracks, having ingested a load of bad sperm. Shadrach was electrocuted by a Radio Shack pacemaker he purchased at a thrift shop. Uncle Shemp was alarmingly unexceptional. He had no detectable lifestyle, and his only accomplishment was the fact that he was a lifelong member of the general public. He started slowly, struggled hard, and eventually clawed his way to the back of the pack. Occasionally he would show a sudden flash of mediocrity, but quickly return to his usual pattern of complete insignificance. He was a man with no memories. He didn't have amnesia. He simply had no memories. As he put it, nothing big ever really happened. As a result, he wore a medic alert bracelet saying, "Please let me die." His only pleasure was his hobby, picking through airline wreckage looking for children's toys. He died at 75 from a head injury suffered as the result of undue glee following a bowel movement. Tumor humor: guys, gals, and cancer. Women: the produce department. I see where Ruthie Garrick went under the knife the other day. She had a tumor on her the size of a grapefruit.
Well, that's bigger than Estelle Mealy's tumor. Estelle's was the size of a large navel orange.
Yeah, but sometimes a large navel orange can be almost as big as a grapefruit. That's true, especially one of them small Indian River grapefruits. I don't like them. Too sour. Me either. Listen, girls, this wasn't no small Indian River-sized tumor. The doctor said this thing was almost the size of a cantaloupe. He claimed if he'd left it in any longer, it probably would have wound up as big as a cassava melon.
Earlene Miller had a tumor the size of a cassava melon. Actually, her sister claimed it was approaching honeydew proportions.
Well, I don't know nothing about no tumors, but when my Aunt Ruby died, her liver was the size of a champion watermelon. I got a picture of it somewhere.
Really? You know, they say that after you die, your liver keeps right on growing.
Well, I'm thinking Ruby's liver had probably reached its limit. I mean, where do you go from watermelon?
Beach ball?
Kate, a beach ball's not a food.
You want food?
I'll give you food.
Well, you hear this.
10 years ago, when my sister Myra had her gallbladder out, they found 20 gallstones in it. Each one of them was the size and the shape of a different type of food. A raisin, a pea, a caper, a grape, a radish, an olive, a pearl onion, a melon ball, a hazelnut, a marshmallow, a Brussels sprout, a Bing cherry, a kumquat, a gherkin, a filbert, a small whole boiled potato, a cocktail sausage, a meatball, a lima bean, and a dwarf pumpkin. They took all that out of your aunt?
They sure did.
Jesus, did she feel any better?
She said she was hungry.
Tumor humor: guys, gals, and cancer. Men: the sports section.
I see where Petey Whalen died the other day. They say he had a tumor on him the size of a beach ball.
No kidding? That one under his arm? Jesus, it must have grown fast.
It sure did. I can remember the day I first saw it. It was small, like a marble. Then almost overnight, it looked like a golf ball. I couldn't believe it.
That was the day he showed it to me. By the time I saw it, it looked like a slightly enlarged handball, maybe just approaching racquetball size. I spent about an hour with him, and as I was leaving, I glanced at it. The damn thing looked like a tennis ball. I don't mean it had fuzz on it or anything. I just mean it was the size of a tennis ball.
Yeah, that's when he went to the hospital. He said on the way over in the taxi, it went from a baseball to a softball, and then in the waiting room, it reached the size of a small regulation volleyball. Finally, when he got into the examining room, the doctors were so alarmed at its growth, they smashed it with a big frying pan, and it temporarily flattened out into an oval shape.
I remember that. For about an hour, it resembled a football.
Yeah, then it slowly became round again, but it kept on getting bigger. Suddenly it developed big black spots all over it.
The soccer ball stage.
Yeah, of course by that time the situation was hopeless. Pretty soon the thing was up to the size of a basketball, and before you knew it, it had gone right past medicine ball and was heading for beach ball status. They finally had to move him out of his room and put him in the gymnasium.
Appropriate. How'd he die, anyway?
They tried to operate on him, but as soon as they made an incision, all the air rushed out of him. Death by deflation. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what we forgot? Lacrosse and polo.
One of my pet pursuits is keeping track of how the news media describe those things in the news that increase or decrease. I can generally rely on the fact that the same verbs will be used repeatedly in the same situations. One of the first things I noticed is that while certain things skyrocket, other things tend to mushroom. Medical costs skyrocket. The national debt doesn't do that. It mushrooms. And experts warn if present trends continue, both of these things will eventually go through the roof. But mushrooming is not the only thing the national debt does. It also balloons. There aren't too many things that balloon. The annual budget deficit used to balloon, then for a while it didn't balloon. Now it balloons again. And by the way, people can balloon as well. I remember reading in the tabloids once that the actress Delta Burke had ballooned to some weight that apparently the publication found unacceptable. So, thus far, we've skyrocketed, mushroomed, and ballooned. But let's not forget snowballing. You know what snowballs? An investigation. What happens is an inquiry becomes an investigation, and the investigation begins to snowball. And what does it snowball into? Right, a full-blown probe. And if the probe uncovers enough dirt, it could possibly mushroom into a full-blown scandal. Then we have the case of swelled. During the 1990s, job roles swelled. By the way, I've often wondered if those job roles are at all similar to the welfare roles we used to hear so much about. Just between you and me, I've never actually seen welfare rolls, but I'm sure that with a little margarine or jelly, they're quite delicious. And it's certainly heartening to see the food stamp program working so effectively. Getting back to our subject here, I've found that one of the best places to keep an eye on these up and down words is Wall Street, financial reporting. For purposes of this activity, I'll use hypothetical examples of economic activity that don't actually reflect recent conditions. I can't keep adjusting this material according to the whims of the economy. And besides, this is about language, not finance. Just to review, we've already skyrocketed, mushroomed, ballooned, snowballed, and swelled. Now, as we enter the world of Wall Street, we add a few simpler verbs: climb, surge, and jump. The stock market climbed today as prices surged on news that housing starts had jumped 10%. Lots of action. Another big thing on Wall Street is soaring. Stock prices soared today as reports showed earnings were up sharply. Or they may have shot upward. At any rate, upward is good. I remember one time hearing Lou Dobbs himself telling me that the Dow Jones Industrials had vaulted upward 200 points. And on the same day, not to be left too far behind, the long bond inched higher. Then we have the very special case of spiraling. The nice thing about spiraling is that it can go in either direction. As medical costs have spiraled upward, the quality of medical care has spiraled downward. And not only do these two medical numbers spiral upward and downward, both of them are actually capable of spiraling out of control. Spiraling downward brings us to the verbs for things that are falling. For some reason, downward verbs are more colorful than upward verbs. Downward is where we discover plunge, plummet, and nosedive. You can always tell when a bull market is over, because housing starts plunge, new car sales plummet, and orders for durable goods take a nosedive. At a time like that, stock prices are usually on the verge of collapse. Or, instead of collapsing, they may simply tumble, drop sharply, or go into a tailspin. And if stock prices are in a tailspin, you can be sure it won't be long before they find themselves in a dizzying free fall. Continuing with bear markets, not all days are so dramatic. Occasionally, prices only dip slightly. Dip slightly is the opposite of edge higher. And before we leave these words for increasing and decreasing, I would like to make special mention of beefed up. I remember reading once that in anticipation of a visit by Yasser Arafat, security at the United Nations had been beefed up. Arafat being a Muslim, of course, beef would have been the preferred meat. You certainly wouldn't want security to be porked up. I can think of any number of reasons why we wouldn't want that. And by the way, if you've ever seen some of these security people, you know that the last thing they need is more pork, or beef, or food of any kind for that matter. Beefed up is one of those terms that has no exact opposite. Nothing ever gets beefed down. They never say, now that Arafat's visit has been concluded, security at the United Nations has been beefed down. Doesn't sound right. Instead, they say scaled back. Always remember, anything that's been beefed up can be scaled back. Although occasionally, for variety's sake, rather than scaled back, the item may be pared down. Hiked and trimmed are two more good up and down examples. Quite often, during the same session of Congress, defense spending will be hiked, while education spending is trimmed. And sometimes, if Congress is in a really bad mood, education spending is slashed and defense spending skyrockets. Well, we've gone from sky high to rock bottom, and we seem to be winding down now. So let me add one last item. I think I may have finally figured out the difference between ramping up and ratcheting up. I'm pretty sure that while ramping up takes place on a continuum, ratcheting up is more a series of increments. But I do find it interesting that, as with the beef situation, I rarely hear of ramping or ratcheting down. As for me, I'm at wit's end. As you know, people no longer have problems in this country. They have issues. This shift grows out of our increasingly desperate need to shade the truth and see things as more positive than they really are. Problems sound negative and ordinary. Issues sound important, worthy of attention. People are proud to announce them. I have issues. They feel superior to others who haven't made the switch. Poor fuck, he has problems. I have issues. To feel extra superior, they may even pair it with some other trendy upgrade. He has a drug problem. I have chemical dependency issues. As with everything in American culture, the use of the word spread indiscriminately to the point where it, of course, lost all its usefulness. During the murder case in San Francisco in 2001, in which two dogs mauled a woman to death, one of the neighbors said, "Everyone knew those dogs had issues with females." Commercials picked it up. L'Oreal says mature skin has issues all its own. An adult diaper commercial informs me that many women have bladder control issues. So now people have all these issues. Trust issues, boundary issues, abandonment issues, personal space issues. Clearly, I have a problem with this word. But problem has lost its power, cheapened by the careless use of expressions like, "What's your problem? You got a problem with that?" No problem. And for those truly in a hurry, no prob. I needed a new word, and I refused to say issues. So, instead, I turned to that ultimate source of creative language bent